Hey guys, how you doing? Happy Homebrew Wednesday. This is Homebrew Wednesday number 5, and I've been talking to some guys who would like me to talk a little bit about approaching your whiskey. There are a couple of guys who would try and have some more whiskey and see how they like it now, because they've tried it before and they would like another go at it. So I've decided to try and make a short little homebrew Wednesday. I will end with a homebrew, and I will also relate this to beer. After all, the process in the beginning is very similar. You mash grains. These are malted grains that has been mashed. Some are not malted, and they also use other corn in there, for example, and well, we'll get to that. So basically you have malt whiskey, you have grain whiskey, you have blended whiskeys, and you have bourbon whiskeys. Bourbon whiskey is the one that can contain corn. Let's get to it. This glass I'm using is this one is called a Glencairn glass. It's not a very big glass because I don't need very much to enjoy a whiskey. I don't use the tumbler because this one has a narrower brim and helps concentrate the flavors more. You can also use a wine glass like a chalice or goblet, and as long as it has a somewhat narrow rim on it, it can work. You can also use cognac type of tumblers, and this is not a good whiskey glass. This is good for beer, lagers and those types, but it's not good for nosing whiskey. Anyway, so let's get to it. This here is 12-year-old Glenfarclas. It's a single malt. It's their standard bottling. So I'm just going to pour about 4 centiliters here. 3 is enough. So you don't need very much. This is sitting at 43%. Whiskeys can be in excess of 60%, so you have to be careful to read the labels first. The first, you can hold it up and look at the color. Doesn't really tell you anything about what's in there. A lot of blends and some other distilleries use colorant to adjust the color so it's consistent. They use E150A, which is a caramel additive, to adjust the coloring. This particular whiskey states on the label that there are no additives. The coloring is natural, and it's also not chill filtered. So what you can do for starters is you can either I usually just roll the glass around like this. Creates a line in the middle there, and from that line they will start to form beads and then legs going down the glass. By watching this, you can look at the thickness of the legs. These are nice and sort of fat for a whiskey, meaning this is about 40% ish. Then you can look at the viscosity of the beads coming down and forming the legs. Some of these are very slow, meaning that there's a lot of flavor in there. There's a lot of oils, which keeps flavors, and it doesn't tell you whether it's good or not. It's just that there's a lot of it. So that's that. So you can tell if the legs are very thin, it's a very high alcohol level in it. So you can tell a little bit from that. Now over to Also, wine and beer, you can swirl those fine. Because when you swirl wine or whiskey, you agitate the alcohol to evaporate and bring forth the flavors to your nose. This is 40% alcohol. There's no need to agitate any extra evaporation. There's enough going on, so there's no need to. You see professionals do it. Well, they have the nose to take it. For me, that's just an alcohol burn. So anyway, I have a list here, so because I'm trying to keep this short. So a lot of people use ice in their whiskey. Somebody has just fills up with Coke or a different soda, and some people put water in the whiskey. And if whatever you prefer, it's your whiskey. Don't let anyone talk down on you for it. It's your whiskey. You enjoy your whiskey how you like to do it. I'm just letting you know how I enjoy mine and why. So the reason I don't use ice is that for me it dulls a lot of the flavors that can be hard to pick out even with no ice. And in order for me to help that, I always nose and taste a new whiskey neat. Always, no matter how high the alcohol content. So let's do that first. I always do it 3 times, or at least 3 times, but in the beginning I take one whiff first, which I know I'll get a little bit of an alcohol burn if I'm overdoing it a little bit, so I try to be easy on the first one. And then I wait just a couple of seconds and then I go back in there. Now I can really catch the sweetness of this one. This particular whiskey has a very sweet nose to begin with. And on the third one, I can actually get apricots. So that's a very good start. So that's enough for me on the nose to begin with. Just a couple of things to write down. I can write down that was not much of an alcohol burn because this has been sitting in the glass for a little while, and also there was a distinct sweetness which I got apricots from. So I'll write that down, and then maybe I'll nose it a few more times, and then I'll have a taste. I always take about from half a teaspoon to a teaspoon. That's enough for me. Just enough to roll it around the tongue, to cover all of my tongue underneath it and everything, and then I swallow rolling over the middle. And I try to find out where it tingles first and foremost. And let's do that. Cheers. Yeah, so it starts to tingle on the tip of the tongue and on the sides, and as I'm going into the finish, it starts to tingle on the middle of the tongue as well. And yeah, I chew it for a few seconds because then it helps me get all around the mouth. This has a very nice mouthfeel. And it leaves somewhat of a coating inside my mouth, so I look at that. It also I can get orange flavor on the palate, which I didn't get on the nose very much, but I may have gotten that if I would be going further with the nosing. So now I add a little cold water to my whiskey in order to release more of the flavor and the aromas, because alcohol is very good at trapping flavors. And if you use cold water, I use a teaspoon or a straw. I never use a mug if I don't have to. because it's much more controlled. So there's not much in here, and it's not very strong for a whiskey. So that was about half a teaspoon. I think that will suffice for this one. And be very careful with particularly older whiskeys, and also bourbons can also sometimes not take too much water. So now I swirl to mix the water in there, but not too much. I'll let it sit there for a little while. I'm not gonna let it sit for as long as I usually do, like 20 minutes, just for this, the purpose of this video, to get it short. So that's what I do. If you do a couple teaspoons and then do the coating again, you'll notice that the beads get a lot fatter, get even fatter. So if you can compare this to a glass of wine. The wine beads will be very fat, the legs there. So I get more floral notes already from after the water's poured in there, and I also get more of the oak comes through there. So a palate. Yeah, a lot more of the oak, and some spices coming through, some pepper. I'm just getting regular black pepper on this one. Also some dried fruits, maybe figs, maybe some raisins. Yeah, it's very nice, and some oranges there as well. Oranges lingers in the finish. The finish on this one is medium. So I write that down too. So yeah. Also, there are different styles of whiskey, even Scotch malt whiskies. You have this one is a sherried whiskey, very sweet, and there's not a whole lot of peat here. If there is, it's very far in the background. I can't detect it. There are very peated and smoky type of whiskeys, particularly from Ireland. You have Lafroig, very peaty one, Ardbeg, Lagavulin, Bowmore. They are a bit different in style. Bunnahabhain. Those are very peaty ones. I don't remember every single one in Ireland, but those are very peaty. Glengoyne is the only distillery, I think, to put on the label that there's no peat used at all in their whiskeys. So that's that. So the beer related thing in the end here is that you can do something called a chaser. It's not very popular here, but in the UK, maybe some people have heard of it. What you do is you order beer. I've tried this, and for me it works best with a bitter, hoppy one, like an IPA. So what you do is you have a couple of good sips from the beer there. Let the bitterness coat your mouth, and then you immediately go and take a little sip out of your whiskey, and it will bring forth another character from the whiskey compared to tasting it like this. So that's how you can do it. I tried to keep it short for you. But yeah, I also needed to have the official headgear of a whiskey lover. I'm not a whiskey connoisseur of any kind, not neither beer. But now it's time for the homebrew to finish this off. So I have a big one here because the smaller bottles, I'm saving those for beer mail and whatnot. So it has aged nicely for, it's about 3 weeks now, I guess. I'm not going to give an aggressive pour here. This, by the way, is my Viking Ale, which I think is suitable in this cider glass. Cheers, guys. I need to talk about, I need to go back and show you, you can't just use milk chocolate. If you want to cleanse your palate, you need dark chocolate. This is 86% cocoa, doesn't have to be that much, but you get the gist. Just dark chocolate, just a little bit will cleanse your palate. Drink a lot of water and you'll be good, especially if you have a whiskey you don't know, there's just a glass that you can have, and you find out that it's a peated whiskey, and you move on to another. You need this to clear your palate. Also, you don't have to buy a whole bottle of whiskey just to have a taste. You can go out to your local pub, but preferably it's much better at home because there's not so much odors at your home, hopefully. So what you can do, you can order small sample bottles. This is a 2 centiliter bottle. Cost me probably about a couple of euros for this one. I ordered 6, so they cost me from 1.5 euros up to 3 and something for the most expensive one, which is this one. It's a 1989 Mortlach. I'm looking very forward to that one, and the other one I showed you was a Glengarry from 1990. So it's not expensive. This comes from the Netherlands. You can go to the whiskeyexchange.com. They have these. This is where I got these. So it's not too expensive if you want to just try a few ones. So this Glenfarclas 12-year-old, I got that in Denmark, and it was less than 300 Danish kroner, which is less than 30 quid, I think. So there's that. So I'm gonna enjoy the rest of this whiskey and this Viking Ale, and have a happy Hungry Wednesday. See you again. Cheers. 17.